Nintendo has experimented with the idea of a multiplayer Zelda for a while now. First, there was the extra 4 swords mode included with the Game Boy Advance port of A Link to the Past. It allowed 2 to 4 players to join up and solve a myriad of puzzles and challenges. It was short, but it set up the basis of a good idea, one that was expanded with the release of 4 Swords Adventures on the GameCube. But that had a high barrier of entry if you wanted to play it the way it was intended, as it required multiple GBAs and link cables. Now, with the release of Triforce Heroes, Nintendo has created its most accessible multiplayer Zelda to date. But do the changes it makes to the 4 Swords formula make for a better or worse experience? Triforce Heroes is odd as a Zelda game. The story takes place in the new kingdom of Hytopia, where fashion is prized above all else. And no one was more fashionable than Princess Styla, who brought happiness to the kingdom with her very presence. However, an evil witch curses Styla to forever wear ugly tights, forcing the princess to hide in shame. With the people of Hytopia scared to be stylish for fear of the curse, the king puts out the call for a trio of heroes to stop the witch and save the kingdom. The stakes couldn't be lower, but the game recognizes this. Much of the dialogue plays up the silliness of the whole situation and is actually quite funny the few times the story sequence takes place. It's all just an excuse to have the hero be able to dress up in different outfits when challenging the levels. And I do mean hero because this is not Link. In fact, Link, Zelda, Impa, and Hyrule are all missing from this game. The hero is actually someone who has the same pointed ears, sideburns, and hairstyle as the heroes of Legend. When 3 of them work together, they become the Triforce Heroes. Your character is simply one of the 3. It's an odd choice, yet despite this, the game does feel like a Zelda title. The Triforce is represented, and there are many nods to the series across the board, mainly in the form of the costumes. Unfortunately, I never really got a sense of Hytopia. I only ever saw the castle and a little of the surrounding area. All that's really available to explore is a single minigame, a camera store where pictures can be shared on Miiverse, the costume shop, and an item store where materials can be bought in order to unlock more costumes. There are some funny characters walking around, but it makes everything feel rather small. Thankfully, the main game is a lot of fun. There are 8 areas to explore with 4 levels each, and, for the most part, they can be challenged in any order. If you want to take on the 4th level first, you can. If you want to go in order, you can do that. You want to just go all over the place depending on your mood? It's completely possible, but it also maintains a gradual arc and difficulty. The first area is the only one available at first, then the next 3 open up, then the 5th, then the 6th and 7th, and finally the 8th. It provides a sense of openness along with a steady increase in challenge. However, the levels are similar in how they operate. 3 items are available as soon as it begins, and the 3 players must decide which one they want to use. The items are always tailored to the challenges ahead, and the heroes must work together in order to clear everything. Each player has a sword, but no shield, the spin attack, and a dash. But the items actually do go a long way in diversifying the combat. There are even novel new ideas that are used with each of the items that help make the challenges feel fresh. But the key new aspect of Triforce Heroes is the Totem Mechanic. At any time, the heroes can pick one another up in order to reach enemies or puzzles just out of reach. It's a way to emphasize teamwork, which is a necessity in every level. Fortunately, while the Totem Mechanic is often used, it's not always required. Sometimes the team will be split and must use their items in conjunction in order to solve the current puzzle. Becoming a totem never wore out its welcome and always felt like a natural extension of the gameplay, but there is an issue with it. If you are picked up by another player, you cannot get down on your own. You're pretty much at the mercy of that player. Now that's not always a bad thing, but in certain situations you might have a plan but someone decides to totem when you don't want to and disrupts everything, leading to a loss of hearts. It feels strange that there's no option to get down from the totem on your own. It could be that developers wanted to emphasize teamwork and didn't want someone to act contrary, but the teamwork is enforced simply by including a shared heart meter. If anyone is hurt, it's taken from the team's pool of hearts. Lose all 8, and the team loses a life. forcing them to replay the current stage of a level once again. Each level only provides 3 fairies with no way to earn more. Lose those fairies and you must restart completely. And this is by far one of the hardest Zelda games in years. There is never an enemy that only takes away a half heart. It's always the full hearts, which means they can drain quickly if the players are overwhelmed by enemies or if they all fall into a pit at the same time. There are moments when the game just feels brutal and can become frustrating, but when your team is able to successfully work together and clear that difficult moment, it feels really good. Triforce Heroes can be incredibly satisfying if you have a good team. There is a sense of individuality when playing though, thanks to the various costumes. Successfully completing a level rewards players with materials that can be used to create new costumes. These can range from powering up different items, to increasing the amount of hearts or rupees that drop, to enhancing Link's natural abilities. Each one is useful in its own way, depending on the level or items available. It helps provide variety when replaying stages, since that's the most efficient way to get rare materials, though they can be bought at a super high price. But even when I didn't have a new costume, the levels still provided variety. Every single one has a set of 3 unique challenges that offer up better rewards. These can be as simple as navigating the level in the dark, or as difficult as racing the clock to finish the level. There are 128 in total, which leads to a lot of gameplay for those that become invested. Oftentimes I found them much more fun than the standard levels. Others, they were so hard that it became incredibly maddening. The game offers up plenty of ways to play on a team. Players can choose to join up with random people or friends online. This can be even mixed and matched. Let's say you only have one friend available. The 2 of you can join in the friend's lobby and then request a random person to fill the 3rd slot. And this is important because 3 players are required to play online. It feels like a strange choice at first, but the levels are clearly designed for 3 players. Another bonus is that if a player chooses a later level, it's still possible for the others who haven't gotten that far yet to play. While playing online, I experienced both flawless connectivity and really spotty connections. Many times the action will pause while trying to sync everyone's gameplay. It really seems to depend on how good your team's internet is. If one is slower, it will affect the rest. But when everyone's connection is good, then I didn't notice any lag at all. And while there is no voice chat, the emoticons that players can use to communicate with each other work surprisingly well. In fact, I sometimes felt that I worked better with the team with the emoticons than when I was talking over Skype. However, I do wish there was an option to call out to specific players. Sometimes I figured out the solution, but the person who had the necessary item didn't know what to do, which led to some minor frustration. Local and download play are available as well, with download play covering everything except for the new arena mode. The arena is surprisingly fun, at least in small spurts. Players choose one of 8 available maps, each with their own quirks. The items available in each are listed as well, so strategy can come into play when choosing a costume. This can lead to unfair advantages, but the chaos of 3 players trying to beat on each other can be a real joy. Plus, the winner can earn new materials as well. It didn't keep my attention for long, but it can be a good way to break up the gameplay, at least for a little while. It should be noted that not much has been said about the single player, and there's a good reason for that. It's incredibly tedious. Rather than taking control of all 3 heroes in a formation, players must switch between them on the fly by tapping the touchpad. This transfers the hero's soul between the stone doppels. In this way, the player can situate them in order to solve puzzles. The totem is available as well, with the bottom hero controlling the movement and the top doppel momentarily coming to life to swing a sword or use an item. It's a system that gets the job done, but the problem is that it feels like work. The doppels must be carried to their destination or controlled individually. It makes everything take way longer at best, and at worst, teamwork moments are incredibly frustrating. Timing specific actions or working together to best an enemy can be so agonizing that I would fly into a rage. It seemed fine in the early levels, but by the end, it was a mess. Single player simply isn't worth the effort. The presentation, though, is excellent across the board. While it uses the same engine as A Link Between Worlds, there are plenty of new assets on display between the level design and the enemies. Everything has a classic feel that really stands out, and the soundtrack is incredible. There's a great energy to each song, and the main theme is simply amazing. It's so good that there's really not much else to say. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes is probably the best multiplayer Zelda attempt yet, but I must qualify this because I prefer cooperative games to competitive. Outside of the arena, there's no competition aspect to the gameplay. something that Four Swords Adventures was able to combine with players working together, yet still competing. There's also not much to explore in Triforce Heroes. It's solely focused on puzzle solving and fighting enemies. If that appeals to you, then I highly recommend it. There are still some issues with the multiplayer, and playing with random people could lead to annoyances, but I still feel like this is a truly fun experience as long as you stick to the multiplayer. If you only have the option to play single player, skip it. But with that being said, I liked Triforce Heroes a lot. It's a streamlined Zelda experience that truly celebrates the idea of working together. Thanks for watching, and be sure to stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Zelda and other things gaming.